Rogers, Steven.
Just give me a chance.
Sorry, son.
I'm saving your life.
General Patton has said that wars are fought with weapons, but they are won by men.
You just don't know when to give up, do you? I could do this all day.
Our goal is to create the greatest army in history.
I should be going with you. Look, I know you don't think I can do this.
This isn't a back alley, Steve. It's war.
But every army begins with one man.
5 tries in 5 different cities. I can offer you a chance.
He will be the first in a new breed of super soldiers.
Why me? Because weak men lose a value of strength, lose a value of power.
That wasn't so bad.
That was penicillin.
We are going to win this war because we have the best men.
Now, Mr. Stark.
Nay, we personally escort Adolf Hitler to the gates of hell.
How do you feel?
Your task won't be simple.
Who the hell are you? The first of many.
Your enemy is not what you expect.
This is how you could choose.
What do you think?
I think it works.
Welcome to the 1940s. This is the MCU review. We are covering Captain America: First Avenger, and we are a team of Captain America and Bucky today. We do not have Howling Commandos behind us. We do not have SHIELD agents. Our guest, we promised, comedian Mike Lawrence. He was booked at South by Southwest. So between a streaming podcast in his house and South by Southwest, he may have made the right choice. But we're going to have him back for another movie. But Elliot is here.
Yes, here I am. For folks who are watching the live stream, if you're wondering why the Shaking Not Heard background was up, I'm wondering why it was up too. So, but yes, hi. We are also in the missing Dave Pinto formation. Yet again, Dave has family matters to attend to, so we told him, "Don't worry about it. Take care of the fam. Will be here when he's ready to return." So it's just it's just you and me, John.
I think we may be able to talk enough.
We are quite verbose.
Yeah,
we are.
So, and what we are talking about is Captain America: The First Avenger. This is, I believe, the 5th MCU film. It is the last film before Avengers and before everything changes. This movie was directed by Joe Johnston, who comes as a special effects person, came out of the Spielberg camp, and you can see it in this movie. Also directed The Rocketeer, another beloved 40s era superhero movie. So clearly a choice they wanted to make for this period specific movie. I probably watched this movie 12 times. And watching it today I had some revelations I hadn't had before. But Elliot, what did you think watching it again?
Well, you mentioned the whole thing about Joe Johnston being the director. I remember before, when Captain America was in production, there were so many people who insisted, because they weren't quite sure what was going to happen with it. Mind you, this is not the first Captain America movie. There was a Captain America movie previously featuring the Red Skull, which for some reason they made the Red Skull Italian.
Yeah, there was a TV movie in the late 70s,
which featured Captain America in modern times. He would be the grandson of the original Captain America.
Yeah, he had a clear shield because it fit as the windshield of his motorcycle. It
Right.
was at the point where the Hulk was a hit.
Yes.
So once the Hulk was a hit, just like the animated series in the 90s and just like the movies today, they ran out every character they could. So there was a Captain America television movie. There was a short-lived Spider-Man live-action series. There was a Doctor Strange television movie. But that they were all quickly forgotten. I think they live on DVD and even VHS if you really hunt for them. But you're right. There was an attempt in the 90s which had an Italian Red Skull and had J.D. Salinger's nephew, Matt Salinger, playing Captain America, who wore a comic accurate costume to the point where he had rubber ears outside his actual head because they made it in a Michael Keaton rubber thick outfit. So it had been a long time since we'd seen a Captain America movie. And in fact, there was a lot of speculation about this one. First of all, it sounds crazy to say it now, but there was a lot of controversy about Chris Evans being cast as Captain America.
And can I tell you something? I was one of those people who didn't buy it either. I'm going to be honest. I remember when they cast Chris Evans, and I remembered Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, in the two Fantastic Four movies. I thought he was fine. I thought he was great as the Human Torch. I could not see him have the gravitas that a Steve Rogers would need. If anything, there was one actor who you would see on television who I thought was the perfect Steve Rogers. His name was Mark Valley, and he would play a lawyer in the show Boston Legal. He plays a very conservative.
Not William Shatner.
Not William Shatner.
Because William Shatner in a Captain America outfit, I'm at least
God.
paying to see that.
And I thought, oh, this guy looks like a Steve Rogers. He had the blonde hair, had the chiseled look. Even on the show, he plays a former military man turned a lawyer. And he had the look and kind of like the stature of someone who I could believe as Captain America. So yeah, I gotta say I was dubious as well. But when I heard that they were bringing on Joe Johnston to direct, I was like, oh, okay. Well, at least we know they're doing the 1940s version because Joe Johnston was always very good at doing period pieces. And there were a lot of folks, and again, of course, this speaks to my obsession with Indiana Jones. Folks are saying if you're going to do a Cap movie, the first one has to take place during World War II, a la an Indiana Jones serial style. Because remember, that television series was Captain America in modern times. And folks were like, well, if you bring Captain America back and make him contemporary from the get-go, it really misses something about that character that's important. They decided, yes, we're going to do the Captain America origin during World War II and really keep a lot of the elements that made the character work and make the character as timeless as he is.
Yeah, and I remember at the time we didn't know that. This was at the time when I was still doing some work for some toy companies, and a friend of mine said, "Hey, we're working on the Captain America stuff," and we got the script. And I said, "Well, does it take place in the 40s? Or is there a prologue in the 40s? Is it half and half?" And of course, he said, "I'm not giving any spoilers." So even going into the movie, I was thinking, all right, well, maybe the third act is in modern day. Maybe Red Skull is revived. But no, this is an absolute period movie, and which was really smart because as they were launching each one of these characters, Iron Man and Hulk and Thor and Captain America, this was an area that no one was playing in. This was an area that wouldn't overlap any other movie, and they could really just kind of play in that sandbox. In a way, when they finally bring Spider-Man to the MCU, they set him in high school because they didn't have any teenage characters, and they were already like 20 movies in. And Kevin Feige and the Marvel crew worked very hard to make each movie distinct. So I think that was one of the ideas, was to make it a military movie and to make it a period movie.
I want to give a quick shout out to the folks who are watching us on the live stream. Welcome, Susan. Welcome, Lehman. Thank you for being here each and every week, as you have been. Thanks to everyone who's watching us, watching the live stream right now as we're recording on Facebook, on Twitch, and YouTube. And thank you to all of you who are listening to the recording on the that's going to go up soon on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. So if you're listening to us for the first time on Radio Misfits, you can catch these shows as they live stream at least a week before their debut on the network. You can go to facebook.com/MCU ReVu. That's MCU ReVu. Twitch TV/MCU ReVu, and YouTube.com. Just do a search for MCU ReVu because we haven't gotten the custom URL yet, but just go enter MCU ReVu to watch the live stream and also catch all our earlier episodes in the video archive.
Now, Elliot, I just noticed we watched a very American movie. We watched a very masculine movie. We watched a very militaristic movie. And neither one of us are wearing glasses.
Which we normally do. But I guess maybe there was a subconscious thing.
I think it might have been. And we're both and I believe we're both drinking bourbon.
And we're both drinking bourbon.
We're drinking an American drink.
Yes, we're men drinking bourbon, talking about the armed forces.
I almost had brandy, and I was like, I'm not going to drink the drink of surrender.
You know what? Although, real quick, we could have been. Let's raise a glass to William Thunderbolt Ross. General Thunderbolt Ross, William Hurt, who passed away this past weekend.
The age of 71.
71. So he died kind of young.
He did, and he was. It was amazing because he was such a fixture of the 80s. He was like the handsome man who could act in the 80s. You know, Broadcast News is one of my favorite films that he did, and Children of the Lesser God, Altered States. But he really had this revival as an elder statesman. He played Thunderbolt Ross in The Hulk, which we covered a couple weeks ago, and came back for Civil War, and is arguably better in that film than he is in The Hulk.
Remember, I talked about the whole thing when he said the character says, that he was enlightened after having a heart attack. And I will say, even in the movie, he didn't look as hardy as he did in previous outings. So I do wonder. Still, 71 is still too young for sure. Yeah,
they said natural causes, but that's all we have so far. And I want to get back to the casting in this movie. First of all, you said you were one of the people that resisted Chris Evans. The argument I'd heard at the time was, well, he was Human Torch, and Human Torch is in the Marvel Universe. That's going to be confusing. And now we live in a world where Josh Brolin can be Cable and Thanos in the same year.
Good point. Although they do make Deadpool does call that out in the movie. I mean, he pretty much calls him to his face. You Thanos looking mother.
Yeah. Well, I had an argument with Stephen Brown, the co-host of Captain Comics. He said the same thing that people said about Chris Evans. He's like, it's going to be confusing. I was like, really? Because one has a glowing eye and white hair, and the other is a purple alien.
Talking about people looking like others. Stephen Brown, okay, folks. Stephen should be joining us for the Avengers MCU review,
which will be our next episode.
Stephen looks like young Howard Stark. I'm telling you, if he grew the mustache like that, he could totally cosplay as Howard Stark from not only from Captain America: The First Avenger, but from the Agent Carter television series.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the confusing Howard Stark, which we mentioned on Iron Man 2, because John Slattery was cast in Iron Man 2 to play Howard Stark in the 70s. And then when they went to the 40s, they were like, I guess they didn't want to de-age John Slattery. The technology wasn't there. I guess it wasn't convincing. So they got Dominic Cooper, who would go on to play Preacher on AMC for 3 seasons. So again, an actor becoming a comic book veteran. But now, anytime Howard Stark appears, we don't know who's going to get a call.
Yeah, there's so many different versions. Yep.
I just, whenever I see Dominic Cooper show up, I get this picture of John Slattery's agent going, "God damn it!" Oh, and speaking of casting, when you were mentioning who was perfect casting, the actor who missed his window more than anything, who had at this point auditioned for Superman Returns, has never played a superhero, John Hamm.
Yes.
Who would have been in the middle of Mad Men as John Slattery was, who I think would have made a good Captain America at this point. And I think that window's closed for him. He's now a middle-aged guy.
I had always vouched that John Hamm would have been a great Captain Marvel, Shazam.
Instead of Brie Larson.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. But the DC well, it's a DC version now, but yes. DC, yeah, but we know him as modern audiences know him as Shazam. I'm always going to know him as the original Captain Marvel, and I always thought, wow, having him become Captain Marvel as the adult Billy Batson would be such a great dichotomy to, what they eventually did in the movie, the Shazam movie, which worked still. I really enjoyed the Shazam movie. Yeah, it was fun. But I mean, I always said Captain Marvel should be like totally the adult version of Billy Batson, whereas in the movie, it's kind of like he's like the college bro version of Billy Batson.
I could see that. I could see that, but I did enjoy it. I do feel that we were robbed of a John Hamm Captain America. Although Chris Evans, I think, embodies this character as well as Christopher Reeve embodied Superman. And I'm waiting for the comments to just start scrolling along to tell me how I should be beheaded. But
no, I'm going to tell you, you hit it right on the head. So many people, when they talk about Chris Evans on social media, that is the parallel that has been made. That Chris Evans has embodied Captain America as well as Christopher Reeve did Superman. And I don't think that's too crazy a statement to make. If anything, it's one of those, I can't see anyone else now play Captain America.
And Marvel doesn't. I mean, we have no problems jumping the timeline here. Mm-hmm. But as we know now, Captain America 4 will be a sequel to the Disney Plus show Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And the Falcon, Sam Wilson, will be Captain America. We are not going to get a recast Steve Rogers in the way that we are not going to get a recast Tony Stark. I think I was surprised that Chris Evans left when he did, because he's still a young man. When Robert Downey Jr. leaves, it's like he's in his mid-50s. And, I always say there's no action star who wants to be an action star in his 50s. They always end up getting hurt on the set. It takes a long time to heal, and they don't want to do it anymore.
Unless you're Harrison Ford, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, but you know what? But when Harrison Ford got to that age, he started making like legal dramas.
Yeah.
And he started making the Sabrinas and the Presumed Innocents. When Arnold Schwarzenegger got to that age, he ran for governor. Action stars don't want to be action stars. You can get him back. Arnold Schwarzenegger came back for another Terminator. Harrison Ford came back for another Star Wars, and then another Blade Runner, and now another Indiana Jones. They'll come back, but when they're 70 and you don't expect them to do too much.
Yeah.
You're not going to run fast, right?
Well, I know a big part of, Chris Evans bowed out too, because it's a whole, first, you're already signing an 8-picture contract with Marvel when you just take on that role, so it's either how many movies as Captain America, then you have to agree to be in the spin-offs, you have to agree to be in the Avengers films, or let's say in an Iron Man or whatever movie. And I know he was like, he wanted to get more into direction and production, which when you think about it, that's where the money is. If you are an actor in Hollywood today, and you want to have bank, you want to have money that you can count on for the rest of your career, well into your golden years, it's take that money you made when you were in front of the camera, save it, invest it in a production company, and start getting those producer credits and creating things that you're going to get paid when you're behind the camera.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about how you look anymore.
Yep.
Like Jonathan Frakes, who played Riker on Star Trek Next Generation, now has a robust television career. He had a brief movie career, but now directs a lot of Star Trek episodes. And you'll see these making of. Will Wheaton will do these Ready Room, and they'll show behind the scenes. And Jonathan Frakes he's got some wispy gray hair. You know, he's not heavy anymore, but he's not in shape, and he's all gray bearded, and he looks tired, and he's got bifocals on. I'm like, this guy doesn't have to worry about looking like Riker anymore.
But he can if he needs to.
Oh, he looked great in Picard.
Picard, yeah, those last couple episodes, he looked pretty good. Although it is kind of nice seeing, big, tall Jonathan Frakes wearing a barbecue apron, still got a bit of a belly under all that,
Yeah, well, it suits his character, and we can turn this into a Star Trek podcast in about 2 seconds because damn Q on Picard this week. But but Chris Evans initially turned down Captain America, and he said he came out in an interview, said he's somebody that suffers from anxiety.
Yep,
and it was a two-pronged. As you said, Elliot, committing to 8 movies and all this time. And also he was feeling the backlash of his reception from the Fantastic Four movies because they aren't great movies. They're fine. They're not terrible. They're not as bad as the Fantastic Four movie they would make with Michael B. Jordan later. Mm. But people didn't like them, and people let him know that they didn't like his performance as Johnny Storm. And to his credit as an actor, people wrote him off as like a bro-ish kind of like the MTV kind of just handsome, shallow guy. Before Fantastic Four, he was making a lot of teen comedies, which is also where he became friends with Scarlett Johansson. And they remained close through both of their Marvel tenures. But he turned it down, and the runner-up for this film would have been John Krasinski.
Who I remember when I saw John Krasinski in George Clooney's film Leatherheads about the origins of the NFL and how football was played back in the early 1920s.
Yes,
and John Krasinski playing this, this college football star and had the nice haircut, and they're going, wow. He would be a really good Captain America.
He would have been. Marvel is so good at casting. I read an article a few years ago of every runner-up they had, and I wish I remembered them all. But to a person, every one of them I went, that guy would have been great. He would have been great. The thing that really sticks in my head is that the runner-up for Star-Lord, and we'll get to Guardians of the Galaxy sooner rather than later, the runner-up for Chris Pratt was Glenn Howerton, who was Dennis on Always Sunny in Philadelphia and AP Bio. And the more I think about that, the more I think he would have been better.
I agree. No, I agree with you. And then you wouldn't get any of the problematic crap that's followed Chris Pratt today. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because, he did 4 seasons of AP Bio, and he's still on Always Sunny, and there's no scandal on Glenn Howerton. But Marvel has that great an eye for casting. But speaking casting, something that hit me this time and has not hit me before. For a very American movie, there are an awful lot of British people in this movie.
Well, it was filmed, I want to say this one was filmed. It was not, as later on we know the Marvel movies are going to be taking over Atlanta in that great big studio complex that they'll build down there. I want to say that Captain America filmed a lot out in London.
Yeah, but there's a lot. Well, Hugo Weaving is Australian, but Hugo Weaving plays a villain. We have Toby Jones, who did Doctor Who. We have Jenna Louise Coleman in a non-speaking role.
I was like, holy crap! It's Clara. There she is.
She doesn't get a line, and it's about a year before she appears on Doctor Who.
Natalie Dormer.
They must have been shooting in England because for her to be a day player with no lines, they're not going to fly her in.
Natalie Dormer will also appear in a very small role.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say I think she's doing Game of Thrones at this time too.
I believe she is.
Yeah. So
and is it David? I wanted to look this up and I couldn't find David Wallace in the beginning. Who was in Harry Potter, and he played the first Doctor.
Yes. He
played the recast first Doctor in the last Peter Capaldi Doctor Who episode, and also played the first Doctor in the biopic about the making of Doctor Who.
And speaking some great, I don't know, was he speaking German or what? I forget.
They're in Norway.
They're in Norway, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, they go, oh, that's it's Filch. It's Professor Filch. What's he doing there?
That's who it is. I'm not a millennial enough to know people's names in Harry Potter. I'm like, I don't know that I know all four houses. I'm like, there's Gryffindor, there's Slytherin is a bad one, there's Hufflepuff, and is it Ravenclaw?
You got him. That's all four of them right there.
I had a joke about Ravenclaw when I was doing stand-up back with Mike Drucker, who was on our last show, and Mike is a millennial, and we were on the show with some other millennials, and they turned to me and they were like, "Hey, what house do you think will be in it?" And everybody said, and I'm a Gen Xer who struggled for Ravenclaw. The only reason I remembered, I said, I'd be in Ravenclaw. And they were like, why? I was like, because you don't know anyone in Ravenclaw, and they're probably the best people at Hogwarts, and they get no credit.
That's good. That's pretty good. Because you at least know the Hufflepuffs. The Hufflepuffs like to eat. That's where I'd be. I'd be a Hufflepuff.
Yeah. But it was interesting how many that explains it, the shooting location explains it, because there's so many British characters in this, and a lot of them are doing American accents.
Yeah. Oh crap.
And of course, I'm missing Hayley Atwell. This movie breaks Hayley Atwell, who I think she had made a Woody Allen movie before. Let's start on Hayley Atwell. But she stays with the franchise much longer than you'd expect, being in a period piece, because we get flashbacks of her in Winter Soldier. We get a middle-aged version in Ant-Man. We get her in old age in Endgame. She got her own series when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't quite the hit they thought it would be. They alternated it with her show. And now she's the voice of Captain Carter, who I believe will be coming back in a season 2 What If. So
and I have this sneaking suspicion that she will be showing up in one of the live action. It may be Doctor Strange.
It is a multiverse.
Yep.
It's quite the multiverse. Yeah, but she's fantastic. Oh, and I've been trying to find a good place to position these since we did the Hulk. But in fact, I think we'll do a segment. Marvel Legends recently, not when the film came out, but released a Hayley Atwell figure and a Captain Carter, who I did not buy. And then she came in a 2-pack with my favorite version of Captain America from this film. This is a very Indiana Jones.
Yes.
Captain America, the leather jacket with the costume underneath, and the World War II period helmet just painted blue. And those are kind of some of the touches I really love in this movie. This movie is not the most realistic, but it's grounded. And I think touches like that keep it grounded.
It's very much a period, a 40s serial. I mean, again, you're right. It's not meant to be realistic. Again, these are Marvel characters. These are comic book characters. The tone of it, I will say this, as I was watching this movie, I was going, man, this movie's way better than I remember. I was going, it seems like Marvel was able to start off phase 1 with a really solid Iron Man movie. Mm-hmm. And going into Captain America right before the Avengers, a really solid capper there to set up the MCU. And you probably could have snuck in one more film in that whole that opening salvo.
They tried. We were supposed to have Ant-Man by Edgar Wright at this point, but there were so many problems with it. We're not going to get to Ant-Man until phase 2, and Edgar Wright will not be the director.
Right.
But
Well,
that
mind
was
you-
the plan. There was going to be one more. Although we were not supposed to get a second Iron Man.
Right. But I was saying, where do you fit Ant-Man into an Avengers movie? So that would have been an additional thing to put. To me, that would have been a little much, if you ask me.
Yeah, Joss Whedon, who wrote Avengers, said that he wrote many, many, many drafts of it. And he said the early drafts, Wasp was the main character.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming Wasp would have come out very Buffy. So and we don't know what Edgar Wright was going to do. They didn't use his script. I think he gets a credit just because of the work he did on it. But you can't imagine the 2015 Ant-Man being moved here, maybe with Falcon cut out and just running the way it was. Paul Rudd was already cast.
Yeah.
So Edgar Wright did cast Paul Rudd, so he was going to be Ant-Man. But what that story would have been, we don't know. I mean, it could have been Baby Driver.
Yeah, that wouldn't have been bad, although you think about it.
No.
The thing though, as far as the movie goes, too, and this was the other thing. Touching on something somewhat related to this film was when we have the revelation of Hydra as an offshoot of the Third Reich. But right from the beginning, you know that the Red Skull is, unlike the comic books, in the movies, he's already trying to disavow Hitler's, Aryan race stuff, and even say, you know what, we started here, but we really had nothing to do with the Nazis. If anything, that Hydra and the Red Skull will turn on Hitler and even turn on the German army at one point during World War II, which you could tell they really wanted to take Hydra and separate it from it being a quote-unquote Nazi organization, which will become a real touchy topic a little bit later when Nick Spencer writes the Secret Empire maxi series, where Steve Rogers becomes a Hydra agent, or the Red Skull uses the cosmic cube to rewrite Steve Rogers' personal history to make him an agent of Hydra, which will make so many people angry, and will set off such a furor on social media to the point where people will call Nick Spencer anti-Semitic for how could he dare take the creation of Jack Kirby, and then not Stan Lee, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. How could he take Joe Simon and Jack Kirby's creation and turn him into a Nazi, which he wasn't, because Hydra agents aren't Nazis. Okay.
Yeah. Although initially, if you go back to the Silver Age, Red Skull was Nazi all the way. But we got to this point, I think in the 90s. I feel like, I don't know exactly what it was, but I pinpointed to Spielberg, to bring it back to Spielberg, was when Schindler's List came out, and then later Saving Private Ryan. Spielberg gave this interview where he said, when I was a younger man, I made Indiana Jones, and the Nazis were these cartoonish characters who could just be knocked off and not thought about. But what the damage they did was something we have to take really seriously. And that's why I'm making films like Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. And when he did that, it was no longer fun to make Nazis bad guys, because Nazis became a much more serious topic. Of course, now people are upset to see Nazis in comic books in a country that has a fully functioning Nazi party. But
no, they don't like seeing Nazis in comic books because the Nazis, the folks who like the Nazis, don't like them being portrayed that way.
Yeah, it's libel.
It's like, how dare you? What's wrong with Nazis? So much for the liberal left.
Oh, Nazis are the problem. Everybody's woke except for Nazis. You're not accepting of the Nazis.
The right is embracing the Holocaust. I did not see that coming.
But I think, but the clear vision to separate Hydra from the Nazi party was to, I think, do a World War II movie that's not about Nazis. And also, toys are a big part of it. Here's the third one I didn't show you. Here is my Hugo Weaving Red Skull, which was also made much after the movie. No armband whatsoever, but there are laws against selling Nazi propaganda, and that goes to toys. You can't put swastikas on toys. There are a lot of collector's models, like the 12-inch scale, that do really accurate World War II, and they do every army. And even they have problems doing the Nazis. When Crystal Skull came out, Hasbro put out the 3 3/4 the Star Wars size figures of Indiana Jones, and I bought everything. And they made characters they called German soldiers, which also no armbands, no anything. But one of these collector companies made an SS multi-pack, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to get this multi-pack, and I'll do a diorama, and some will fight Indiana Jones, and some will fight Captain America. And when I opened the box, there was a big swastika on the box, and I just wanted to close the box.
Oh, geez.
Because I was like, who's going to see this box in my recycling? So when you get to toys, which honestly, Marvel had a longer track record selling toys than they had making movies. You know, they really limited the amount of Nazis that are in this movie.
And let's be honest, the Hydra symbol looks cooler. It just looks really cool.
And as we move on, Hydra is not a 40s thing because it's a Marvel construct. They can manipulate it and shape it to fit a lot of different things. And we will see Hydra come back again and again in many different forms.
I mean, Hydra, for those who might not be aware, was created in the Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. comic books. At that point, had nothing to do with Nazis. It was just a Spectre type of organization that was supposed to be the shadow evil organization that Nick Fury was supposed to fight, much like James Bond fought Spectre in the movies. It wouldn't be until years later when Chris Claremont would do a issue of X-Men detailing the adventures of a very young Magneto and Professor X, where they encounter someone who was one of the founding members of Hydra and reveals that he was using Nazi gold to fund the works of Hydra. And then suddenly, oh yeah, that's really cool. Hydra has this, that's really bad. Those are the badass guys. And yeah, would become a tad problematic later on.
Yeah, because Nick Fury, at the time you mentioned them, Nick Fury was a spy comic. It started as a World War II comic. Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos, and all of the Howling Commandos are in this film, except for Nick Fury, because we've already established him as Samuel L. Jackson. Which
there was a time when I was wondering, and again, sorry, I don't mean that this is going to sound really bad, because, well, there's no way of me saying this and not it sounding good. But for a moment, I was teasing in my brain the idea, oh, wait, is that one black guy actually a young Nick Fury?
No, that's Gabriel Jones.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he plays him later, but no, it's just right. Dum Dum Duggan, though.
Dum Dum Duggan, played by Neil McDonough, who is a great character actor. This guy pops up in everything. He did an amazing season of Justified. He is the red shirt in Star Trek First Contact to come back to First Contact, and he's all skinny and young and Timothy Olyphant looking. Great character actor. He's the kind of guy that, like John Hamm, missed his window in that, like, he should have had his own hour cop show. He's great in this. And they build up those characters so well that I don't know if it's been too long, because it's been 11 years since we got Captain America, but wouldn't you like to see a Howling Commandos Disney Plus show?
Oh, definitely. I would love to see the Adventures of a serial of the Adventures of Captain America in World War II when he finally does start fighting, because you get a tease of that in this film. And, he has multiple adventures as he goes, even when you have that one bit with the giant Hydra tank that shows up, which was straight out of a Jack Kirby, Captain America comic book. And
explosions behind him.
Yeah. Oh,
Hey.
by the way,
I have a surprise for you.
I see that Howard Stark has appeared.
the non-John Slattery Howard Stark.
A wild Howard Stark has arrived.
So, Steven's 2 weeks early for this podcast, lest you think he's 40 minutes late.
Yeah. Sometimes you show up spontaneously to a live broadcast, You can see I comb my hair with a balloon.
Yes. You look like early Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
The eyebrows up.
Uh-huh. What are you guys talking about? Captain America?
We are talking about Captain America, and Dave Pinto was not able to make it tonight, and Mike Lawrence was not able to make it tonight. So Elliot and I were just kind of yelling at each other.
Yeah. That's different from any other episode, huh?
Yeah, I think we need a mediator.
Yeah, probably. You need somebody to throw a chew toy down for you guys.
We were just discussing the Howling Commandos in the middle of this movie, and actually, what you bring up, Elliot, and I want to ask you, Stephen, is this is the biggest problem I have with the movie. As you were saying earlier, it's like a 1940 serial. And it's working for me. And I find I get restless in the middle of the movie. And I think this viewing, I realized because it's so episodic, nothing is building anymore. It reminds me of the Tim Burton Batman, where in that middle section, like Joker just runs around the city doing stuff. And Batman sits in the Batcave and glowers. And Joker's running around doing stuff. And Batman sits around and glowers. And we have like, here's Captain America fighting a tank. Here's Captain America breaking into a jail. Here's Captain America riding a motorcycle. Here's Captain America on a train. But they're not building to anything. They're just kind of showing you like, it's almost like they're different episodes of a Disney Plus show. And when we get to that third act, it's like, oh, this is important just because this is how we get rid of Captain America and the Red Skull. I feel like we didn't have a story that built up to that moment. The Tesseract's kind of there. Red Skull's kind of there. Captain America's mostly fighting just Nazis and Hydra and not even fighting Red Skull. So I feel like that took a lot of the air out of the balloon for me. And I'm wondering what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, that middle section of the movie is just very montagey, and I guess it's supposed to kind of stand in place. One of the things I'm kind of surprised of with those kind of the first wave of the Marvel movies is how low budget they are compared to what we have now. Now, obviously, now we have 20 plus movies to build up to where, even something like Black Widow seems like it has a massive budget. But with that first Captain America, it's always like, oh, yeah, they didn't really have the budget in these that they have now. So it's how do you cram in the idea that Captain America has been running around during a whole war and showing him making a difference on the front lines without, being like Saving Private Ryan. It's like there's a lot that goes into these movies. And I think part of it is just like they didn't have the budget to do these big war pieces. So we got these kind of like, well, he's fighting side missions and he's fighting just Hydra cells. He's not really going after Nazis. And, if they had the budget now that they did, this movie would look massively different. It probably would be a big scale war movie where you'd have him probably in bigger combat situations than this like montage of like, all right, we're going to do, show 6 different missions that Cap's on that don't really have a larger point beyond, hey, take out the Hydra train, take out the Hydra tank, kind of go around beating up Hydra guys at different bases.
Yeah, that's a great point, Stephen, is that we're still in the mid-budget period of Marvel because Avengers will change everything.
Yeah.
And it reminded me when I saw this in the theater, this was the summer of 2011. We had just gotten Thor. And Thor is probably about the same budget, but Thor's outside more. It has like more of locales. There's Asgard and there's the New Mexico desert. Whereas Captain America feels very soundstagey because the cities have to be CG manipulated to be period pieces. And there's the plane is incredibly fake that they're on. But I remember the summer this came out. This came out right before X-Men First Class. And and I remember feeling like, oh, Marvel's almost up to Fox's X-Men movie levels. And once Avengers happens, it's going to shoot so far past it that we're going to get Avengers Infinity War and we're going to get Deadpool.
Right.
like Fox kind of stays where it is, where Marvel's just going up and up and up. And I think this is the point where they're neck and neck.
Yeah, First Class seemed like a bigger movie to me because they went to more locations. The end sequence of First Class seemed much bigger because you have so many more characters running around. But yeah, Avengers kind of blows that all out of the water. Only a year later, I didn't realize it at the time, but it makes sense. Is when I watched the first Captain America movie, I'm like, oh, this is like The Rocketeer. And it's the same director as The Rocketeer. And I didn't know that when I went to see it. And then, I don't know when I found that out, but it's
pretty certain that's why he directed.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And I think it's almost kind of like they almost exist in the same universe, you know? It's like you could see them teaming up almost based on kind of like the budgets, adjusted for inflation with the time.
I swear you're absolutely right. Also, this movie could also exist in the Indiana Jones universe because Hugo Weaving says, while Hitler goes searching for his trinkets in the desert. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute.
Is he looking for the Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah. Because, Joe Johnston he worked on Raiders. I mean, he was one of the storyboard artists on that. He's also the guy who designed Boba Fett. The costume for Boba Fett. And would later, go on and do a whole lot of October Sky is another movie he would do. About the start of the space program. So yeah, no, you're right. But that's why I just enjoy this movie so much because it has that Indiana Jones feel.
It does.
It's a period piece. And Stephen, before you came on, and by the way, we didn't properly introduce you, I think, to our live stream viewers. Stephen Brown, who is John's regular co-host on Caffeinated Comics. So
we got all excited.
We're really excited.
Yeah, folks who are listening to the podcast, they know your voice. They know.
Yeah, presumably.
It was like a Saturday Night Live monologue where Chris Rock just walks in. Nobody
just wanders in.
Nobody goes, "It's Chris Rock."
Right.
But of all the Marvel movies, if you ask me, the Captain America movies are the ones that have the most consistent quality across the board. Because the first one is a good, solid start. Is it perfect? No, but it establishes Captain America. I liked how, yes, the period feel to it. Yes, it's very episodic, but it feels very, again, Indiana Jones for me, which I love. It has all the little nods to the comic books. It shows, Captain America punching Hitler like he does on the cover of the original comic book, and it has that great joke. He goes, "You think you can pull this off?" Oh yeah, I've punched Hitler 2,000 times.
Yeah,
it has all those great bits. But then, of course, the Russos are going to take it to the next level when we get to Winter Soldier, and then after that, Civil War. So the
which arguably is not a Captain America movie.
Yeah, it's like Avengers 3.
Yeah, it's like 2.5.
It's a Marvel Universe movie with Captain America as lead.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's interesting because Joe Johnston is clearly picked for these reasons that he can do period pieces and he can do this type of tone and action because he's not asked back, and he's one of the only directors that we don't have a dramatic story about. We know why Jon Favreau stopped after Iron Man 2. We know why Joss Whedon stopped after Avengers 2. We know why Edgar Wright never made Ant-Man. With Joe Johnston, it was kind of like, I'm done. When the Winter Soldier script comes around, I'm like, who knows? Maybe Joe Johnston was like, I don't know what to do with this. It's like, is he still in the 40s? Then no.
Yeah.
Well, outside of the Russos, who really is, churning them out? Okay.
James Gunn.
Okay, James Gunn. Then you got Ryan Coogler doing he's going to be doing the next Black Panther movie.
Taika's coming back, right, for a second.
Taika's doing second
Thor. Yeah. Well, a fourth Thor, but his second.
Yeah. But the first two.
And Peyton Reed. Peyton Reed is directing all 3 Ant-Mans.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so yeah, I was going to say they always have, but I know when it came to Ant-Man, it's like they want to have that same director execute a particular vision because there's that trilogy. I think Thor is the first movie that breaks the trilogy mold too. It's like everyone's supposed to have 3 films and you're done. But
you got one and done with Thor up until Taika.
And Avengers was supposed to be 3, but they just extended the shooting and cut the movie in half, and of course made 2 3-hour movies. But they didn't come back for a 4th film. It still fit under everyone's contract.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is they probably want to lock directors in. Hey, here's your property, do a trilogy, and we'll give you another one if it does really well or particularly well. And I think it's like the guys that can play ball, you see it. Peyton Reed, play ball. Hey, you have to do Kang. Okay, I'll do Kang. You know, but Joss Whedon, it's like you listen to the director's commentary on Avengers: Age of Ultron, and it's like they broke that man trying to cram 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. So
and to be honest, he was going to have to get used to being broken.
yeah, he sure was. But I think like
that was just the beginning of it.
No, but I think by the time they get to like Guardians, they've got a pretty good idea of like, okay, we trust this director. Here's a property that no one cared about, you know, till 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I think it really comes down to directors. Now that it's this factory, it's whether or not you can play ball. Because Sam Raimi is doing the second Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
we're not getting Peterson. He's not coming back for it. And we're getting but of course Marvel's so big now. We're getting the guy that did 3 Spider-Man movie to do the second Doctor Strange.
Which is a nice, like, he does both Ditko characters. That's kind of a nice, you know.
I haven't heard any rumor to it, but I still kind of hope Tom Holland just pokes his head up in this.
Yeah.
I mean, considering Benedict Cumberbatch is in No Way Home, which, by the way, comes out tomorrow on streaming.
Streaming where?
To buy. So if you want to buy it on iTunes or Vudu or Amazon Prime, they have not announced where it's going to be. It's not automatically going to Disney Plus because it's still Sony.
Right.
And Sony doesn't run Crackle anymore. Elliot, I see you touching your nose.
He's got a thought.
I know you've brought this up before. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is this the first time that Marvel is touting one of their films as by said director? Because they kept saying by Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi directing, you know, they show that like in big letters on the trailers, you know.
It possibly, I feel like they pumped up James Gunn for the second Guardians. But to tell everybody, hey, come back because you liked the first one, and we got the guy who did the first one. And a lot of that is who's your good press agent. You know, speaking of No Way Home, I was thinking of how little credit John Watts gets.
Oh yeah,
he directed 3 great Spider-Man movies.
Yeah.
That's more than Sam Raimi. No one talks about him.
Yeah,
people talk about Tom Holland. People talk about Kevin Feige. You know, more people talk about Chris McKenna, who wrote all 3, who is a writer on Community. Then talk about the director of all 3, which have a very specific tone compared to Mark Webb, who did the Andrew Garfields, or Sam Raimi. So some directors, they make superstars. You know, there are your James Gunns and your Ryan Cooglers, and then there your John Watts and Peyton Reeds.
Yeah, it's like tiers.
And the director on the WandaVision series, I forgot his name, who they're bringing in to do one of the MCU films.
Is that Tom Waldron? Or
is it Waldron? Yeah. Is it? No, wait. Waldron wrote WandaVision, didn't he?
Yeah, he came from Rick and Morty.
So, but I think he's either writing or directing something big that's coming up. So
I wonder if that's maybe their new model is try a bunch of these guys out on Disney Plus, get them when they're cheap, when they're doing TV shows or, you know, streaming shows, and then move them over to doing these bigger movie projects when it's like, okay, you can be trusted to handle, you know, this many characters, you could juggle the story, you know, it might be kind of their new onboarding system.
Because that's what they were doing with the early MCU stuff. They were pulling in directors from other big series like Game of Thrones. The guy who did the second Thor was from Game of Thrones.
Joe Johnston doing Rocketeer.
Yeah. They're like, oh, okay, we got these guys. We know they can do this stuff because we've seen them do it in further studios and other shows.
The Russos came from Community, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the Russos come from Community. You get Joss Whedon they get for Avengers because he was so good on ensemble pieces with Firefly and Buffy. And
he will also write and direct their first billion-dollar MCU film. Yeah.
You get Kenneth Branagh. Kenneth Branagh is known as a Shakespearean actor and director. So you get him to do Thor because Stan Lee thought that Norse gods spoke like Shakespeare.
But then they won't call him back.
Right.
No, he's another guy that didn't enjoy
his time. Not call him back, or does he not call them back?
He did not want to come back for Dark World. And I think they didn't want him back.
He was like the woman who directed Wonder Woman, I think, did Dark World, right?
Patty Jenkins?
Yeah.
No, she was going to, and she walked off.
Oh, she walked off? Wow.
And it was,
I didn't know that.
Yes, that's right. And they had the creative, as they said, creative differences. So
so they got Alan Taylor, who directed a lot of Game of Thrones, figuring, okay, you can do these big kind of epic Lord of the Rings type stuff. And spoilers for that episode, it's the worst one.
It's got Kat Dennings, though. I mean, I'm not going to complain.
Yeah, WandaVision has Kat Dennings.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah.
I'd rather watch that.
Well, anyway, we're talking about Captain America, the first Avenger here.
That's the thing about the MCU. It's such a big community that it's very easy to throw stuff in about other movies.
But going back to this, though, I will say, again, the quality. I mean, it's again for me and Steven, I don't know the last time you've watched the film. I just watched it yesterday because I like to have it fresh in my mind before I talk about it. And even with all the little, niggling things, things like it's not terribly, it's very episodic. It's, it doesn't build, has kind of a steady through line through it. I mean, I just enjoyed it a lot more than I remember. Again, Chris Evans himself, I forgot. And this is a thing because we ran the trailer. If you're watching on the live stream, we ran the trailer to the movie right before we came on air. And I don't remember ever seeing that trailer. I remember walking into seeing Captain America fairly unspoiled, not really knowing what to expect, and being totally blown away by the bit where they put Chris Evans' head on that little guy, that skinny guy's body. And it was done at that time. Well, it's effective in some scenes more than others.
Well, it's a deep fake, and now we know what it is. But at the time, I'm like, well, this isn't Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So how did they make him so small?
It's skinny.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those, but Chris Evans's performance in that, even when you consider it's just his head on someone else's body for that first, half hour of the film, is just so well done. I mean, it's so seamless, and you're going, oh, okay, this is different, because I didn't think they had to go to that extent to show how really puny and whatever Steve Rogers would be. In fact, when I read the old Captain America comics, I remember Steve Rogers being portrayed as kind of like that skinny, not that physically imposing, but I mean, seriously, like a foot shorter than everybody else. Sebastian Stan is towering over him,
Yeah, he's so small that I wonder how he has a voice that deep. Because he has that same voice through the whole. It's not like he does a Peter Parker. He doesn't do a Bruce Wayne Batman in this with his voice. But you can tell he really puts the work in. And as we were saying before, people had written him off for playing Johnny Storm. And within 5 minutes, I'm like, he is not playing. He's an actor. They say the difference between a movie star and an actor is an actor plays different people. A movie star always plays himself. Like Jack Nicholson was probably the best actor that was a movie star. Because, like you can't take The Shining or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or Batman away from Jack Nicholson, but they're all Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw Chris Evans, I was like, oh, he's not Johnny Storm. He's this. And then it happened again when I saw Knives Out. When I saw him in Ryan Johnson's Knives Out, I was like, oh, yeah, he's not Captain America. Like he could really change his mannerisms and his attitude. He's not one of those actors that'll put on a ton of makeup and do voices. But it's these little shifts where his characters are very distinct people. And you can tell he spent a lot of time figuring out who Steve Rogers was.
Well, I'll be honest. The character he plays in Knives Out was more the person I would have expected him to be if I met him in real life. Good looking guy, pretty much, knows women will fall for him, and he's going to inherit a lot of money and looks great in that goddamn sweater, and just kind of a jerk who tries to
I hate his sweater.
Tries to ingratiate himself to you.
He can say get in, and Ana de Armas will get in his car.
Yep. Hate him.
Yeah, I remember when they cast him, because I'd only really seen him in he was in Scott Pilgrim, and then he was in Human Torch. And he was okay in both of those movies, but I remember being like, oh, you got the guy that played the Human Torch to be Captain America. Like, I couldn't see it. And then, like, everyone kind of raves about Robert Downey Jr. for his Iron Man, and I think people maybe don't give Chris Evans like the credit. I think Steve Rogers is like probably one of the hardest characters to pull off in the MCU, and I mean he just like knocked it out of the park.
Well, we mentioned earlier in this broadcast that he embodies Captain America the way Christopher Reeve embodies Superman.
Yes,
and they both do the same thing in a way, is that they're completely sincere but interesting.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because even
it's
in their comics, Captain America and Superman can be boring.
Yeah, it's a hard character to write because they're so like good, you know? It's hard to write guys without like an edge, and he did a really good job of not only making him like have the integrity and everything you'd expect to have out of like Captain America, but then also to give him like an edge that didn't seem out of place. You know, when especially when he starts interacting with the other Avengers, you're like, man, this guy's gonna tear you apart, Tony. You better watch what you say. You know, it's I think the big part of it is like casting. You know, they nailed him. He was perfectly cast. And then it's one of the things I always forget until I rewatch the movie is like the rest of the cast, phenomenal. Tommy Lee Jones is great. Toby,
speaking of guys that play themselves all the time.
Right.
Why do I always forget Tommy Lee Jones is in this movie when he has every favorite line that I have in this movie?
Right. He kills it. He absolutely kills it.
He's just doing Men in Black again.
Right.
He's fantastic. And I hear he's a pain in the ass for everyone he works with. But when that's the result,
I mean, you
glad
get
I'm
gold
not
out
on
of him.
set.
But even like, you know, I know he never came back. Hugo Weaving didn't want to do it again, but like these are great, like Red Skull. Toby Jones is an awesome Arnim Zola. It's like Peggy Carter's great. It's like they just kind of knocked it out of the park with all the different casting. So, you know, this is the movie where we got like young Howard Stark and Bucky Barnes. It's like it's a pretty extensive cast, and there's not really like a weak player in the whole team. Every one of them does like a pretty good job.
And they all know what the tone of this movie is because this hit me this time watching it. It's so specific because, as we said, it's a period piece and it's uplifting and it's patriotic and it's embodying this character who's all good. But it's this very fine line between between realistic and grounded and aspirational. Like it never goes over the top, even with the 40s dialogue. I was watching. When I was really looking at the 40s dialogue, I was like, why does everybody sound like they're on Mrs. Maisel? I'm like, it's not the 60s, but they're all playing it consistently. Everybody fits in this world. And yes, it's the world of the MCU, but it's not. Like they've never made another movie like this, and they never will. Then everybody is right in this movie. As you said, nobody's doing a thing that's out of sync. You know, Stanley Tucci in this. Stanley Tucci.
Oh yeah, Stanley
can be
Tucci
very realistic, or he can
phenomenal.
be very over the top and just needle drop right where he needs to.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's like it might not be like one of the greatest MCU movies, but it's like it might be one of the best, like perfectly cast movies because everyone in it is just knocking it out of the park consistently.
Yeah, well, as we've been saying, Iron Man was the fluke. Iron Man was the lightning, where they hoped every movie would be as good as this. And, you know, Hulk isn't.
Yeah.
And
Thor isn't.
Thor almost is. But Iron Man was so much better than all the other ones that it raised all the boats. So when we get to Avengers, which Steven, you'll come back for.
I certainly will.
We're basically going to carry the energy from that first Iron Man movie and pick up all the other characters. And that's when it's just going to be a nuclear explosion.
I'm going to suggest, Steven, for folks who watch us on the live stream, if you would be so kind as to shave the beard and just have a little bit of a mustache so you look like young Howard Stark.
Just a little bit more.
I swear, I was watching this, I'm going, holy shit, that's Stephen Brown.
Yeah, the nicest compliment I've ever gotten is that I kind of look like this guy.
Well, the fact that he doesn't shave, he now looks like AMC's Preacher.
Oh, yeah, there you go. He's got better hair than I do, though.
Yeah, but I gotta agree with you. The aspirational part, especially, that is so important to nail with Captain America for this. When you set up the character, if you want this to work, this is probably the most important linchpin that you got to establish for Avengers going forward. Then, I know we're going to talk about Avengers next, but then I can start now singing Joss Whedon's praises for this, because when he can take Chris Evans's earnestness and Robert Downey Jr.'s total sardonic, snarkiness, wise ass crackery, kind of like, I don't need you. You need me more than I need you sort of bit. And because I remember going, I have no idea how these two are going to work together, let alone supposed to become best friends as they are in the comics. That's a relationship that will develop over time, in the MCU. Without Chris Evans there to set up that counterpoint to Robert Downey Jr., there's a really nice symmetry to it, that you will start with Robert Downey Jr. and you will end with Chris Evans kind of putting up the point and the counterpoint before you go into Avengers. I was like, you've got to give Marvel credit that they were able to do it, just do it as well as they did, considering that you did have a little bit of a dead spot in the middle of the Hulk movie.
Mm-hmm. And then they found Hulk who played the role completely differently to balance it. And I think that is the strength in the pairing, because as you mentioned in Avengers, they're going to come back to that relationship again and again and again. It's going to happen in Age of Ultron. It's going to happen in Civil War. It's going to happen in Endgame. These two are going to have to work together and rub each other the wrong way. And you're right. It is, you have to have the contrast between the two of them. You can't have both of them being flippant and crazy. Like, he has to be the constant. You can't have two Kirks.
Yeah.
You have to have Kirk and Spock.
And it works too, because it wouldn't have worked if it wasn't somebody as gifted as like Chris Evans was. Mm-hmm. It's like he can go toe to toe with Robert Downey Jr. in like a scene. And had they gotten somebody that, I don't know, just a different casting person in the role, it's like they got really lucky, because we wouldn't have seen Civil War if their Captain America choice couldn't have held his own against the Iron Man. It's like they would have gone in a different direction. We might not have gotten 3 Captain America movies, or, him picking up Mjolnir in Infinity War or Endgame or whatever. It's like a lot, I think, of what they decided to focus on with Captain America was because they got such a good talent in there to kind of do the job. It's like he could have missed, he could have swung and missed, and we wouldn't have had any of these movies.
And that's a really good point, because up against Robert Downey Jr., who I've heard is as strong on set as he is on screen.
I bet
you got to measure up. And Steven, I'd never really thought about this until you mentioned it, but Chris Evans stands toe to toe. And when you look at especially the later Avengers films where everybody's ping, 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 you've got to be of a certain barometer.
Yeah.
And you can see like, okay, Mark Ruffalo can handle it. Put him next to Robert Downey Jr. Chris Hemsworth, he'll say something and run away.
Yeah.
And you made me think of Infinity War when they're all on the planet together. Tom Holland is really good, but Tom Holland is taking a subservient role.
Right.
That
He's playing to it.
But I feel like when you look at that movie and through that lens, Chris Pratt comes to play and gets his ass handed to him. So Benedict Cumberbatch takes his place.
Right.
Because you get a couple of moments with Star-Lord and Robert Downey, and he's dismissed, and it's Doctor Strange who goes toe to toe. So you have to be at a Benedict Cumberbatch level of acting to keep your toes in there. And what we're proving is that Chris Evans is.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of it you see, it's like I don't really follow him or anybody really out in the real world here, but like occasionally you see like posts of his on like Twitter and stuff, and it's like, man, this guy is like Captain America. You know what I mean? It's like he's always saying like wholesome shit, and he's like, you know what I mean? He's always like on the right side of history with things, and it's like they got really lucky with him, and I think it's something where, he had done a lot of interviews where he had talked about like taking on the role and very concerned about the role, and he had a lot of anxiety with the role because he was well aware, obviously, that the potential to change your life, and you got to do all the talk show circuits and you become this huge movie star. And the Avengers arguably is some of the biggest movie stars in the world, and that he was just open and like frank with that and the anxieties and everything that went into it. It was really like kind of a testament to the guy's character. You know what I mean? It's like maybe that's part of the gig. It's like you get these guys that kind of are the characters. Robert Downey Jr. isn't really playing Tony Stark as much as he's playing Robert Downey Jr. You know what I mean?
Tony
It's
Stark
like,
was never written that way
No,
before Robert Downey Jr. played him.
That's what I always tell people is like Robert Downey Jr. changed how we wrote Loki in the comics. And it's the same way Tom Hiddleston changed how he wrote Loki in the comics. It's like these people came along, they put a spin on the character. Now the characters are inseparable from the actors that played them. And to some extent, I think that's not as true with Chris Evans, but he really does embody like what you kind of admire about Captain America. You look at Chris Evans, you see him in interviews, and you're like, yeah, this guy's like, seems like a stand-up guy. Like, you know what I mean? Who knows what these people are really like behind the scenes, but everything you've seen in public, the guy appears to be as good a character as he's portraying on screen.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I was saying before, I was the most disappointed when he stepped down because he's still a young man. He's not a middle-aged guy that was like, okay, I'm going to hurt myself doing this. So it's time to stop being a superhero. Like you just get the feeling Chris Evans is like, oh, my story's done. And there's always rumors about Chris Evans. Is like, maybe he'll do a voice in What If. Maybe he'll show up in a flashback in Captain America 4. Like maybe he's not really done with the role, but because I don't get the feeling that there's fatigue. It's more of like, I think
maybe he needs a break. Captain America, if you think about it, I remember reading this back when I think Infinity War came out. He played Captain America every single year since he got cast as Captain America because he was either in an extra like scene in like Spider-Man or Thor, or he was in that many movies. And it's like, maybe the guy just needed a break. You know what I mean? It's like, that's a long time to do
But he said he could do this all day.
He did. He told us that multiple times.
You know how long a day is? It's 24 hours. He was Captain America for 9 years. But you know what? Robert Downey Jr. also played Tony Stark every year, but he didn't really do anything else. He did like a Zach Galifianakis movie. Chris Evans was like making Snowpiercer and making Knives Out, and he's been a really, really busy guy.
I mean, I'd kill for like a Captain America Returning the Stones show on Disney Plus. You know what I mean? It's like he just kind of disappears and that's it. It's like, no, go to Vormir. You know what I mean? It's like, talk to the fucking Red Skull.
You know that they've probably talked about it. It's just you need Chris Evans to decide to do it.
Yeah.
And again, but mind you, if you want Chris Evans to do it, you need to offer him producer's credit and points on the back end. Much like you have like Patrick Stewart with Picard right now. I mean, the dude's not just starring in the show. He's involved with the writing of the show. He's involved with the production. He has a lot of say-so in what happens with that character. Stephen, before you came on, we talked a little bit about Picard and said this could easily turn into a Picard episode. But
yeah.
You know,
like really good.
Maybe when you finish the MCU review, you guys will do the Picard.
Picard stuff. Because if you watch Picard now, they are pulling on a lot of. They're doing some stuff about Patrick Stewart's own personal experiences with domestic violence from when he was a young boy,
which was never touched on in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Never.
Yeah.
And he's like, and he said, you know what? If Picard and I are kind of like the same here, I want to start pulling on that. And he's pulling on that. I could see Chris Evans, like you said, okay, we're going to do a Captain America, like you said, a Captain America Returning the Stones, or, Captain America Through Time sort of thing. And you say, okay, Chris, here's the thing. You reprise the role. We want you to do this. You get a producer's credit. You get to be in the writer's room. You get to decide, how you think the character is going to go here, in what direction. And that's how you get them in there. That way you don't run the risk of, let's say, doing what they did with Mark Hamill on The Last Jedi, where, okay, we're going to have you play Luke Skywalker, but you're not going to be happy with anything we're doing with the character.
Yeah.
Right.
And neither will the fans.
And a lot of the fans aren't going to like it either. Correct.
Yeah.
Fans.
Yeah. Because that's like, to me, I always like not to pull in. I hate to make everything about The Last Jedi, but there's so many people who sit there and they go, well, that's the way the character worked. Luke, he was an idealist, but eventually idealism fades away, and and the reality sets in, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, how would you have felt if by the time Endgame came around, Captain America said, the world sucks, America sucks, you can't win, we give up?
Oh, then it would have been Man of Steel.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
just the Mon Pa Kent going, don't help people.
Don't help people. You got to be in it for yourself.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the thing. There was that thing about the idealism of the character that's a timeless thing. And I know, and Chris Evans, I mean, that's called knowing your brand. Chris Evans now has taken that. He knows a lot of people associate him with the character. Oh, Stephen, before you came on, we were talking about how people were just totally going after Nick Spencer on social media for Secret Empire.
Yeah.
Remember the whole thing when he makes
Hail
Hydra, and everyone just got angry.
Yeah.
And I mean, even Chris Evans himself made a tweet where he saw the image and he goes, "Say it ain't so," So many people were like, "Oh, how dare you? How can you do that with Captain America? He's this unsulliable symbol of idealism. You can't do that with him." So Chris Evans has learned to take that he's associated with that character. Has been making documentaries, like political documentaries that are supposed to be unbiased, either side, because he knows that he has that platform now because of his association with that character. There might come a time though when he needs to refresh that association.
It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to see what he does next. I mean, it's like to talk about your other show. Daniel Craig is not Bond anymore. So who's he gonna be? Is he gonna be the Knives Out guy or what? It's hard to maintain that level. It's also hard to recreate that level.
Man, if I'm Daniel Craig and I know that I had so much say so in what happened with Bond, and I know I'm getting money on the back end, for it, I'm relaxing.
Yeah,
I'll
take it easy.
I'll do a couple Knives Out movies with Rian Johnson, and maybe the occasional comedy with Steven Soderbergh, like I've done, and then just relax the rest of the time, because at this point I'm too old for that shit.
Or to bring it full circle, just be like John Hamm.
John Hamm,
just guest star in everybody else's stuff. Like it's getting to the point with John Hamm. I'm like, when did Mad Men end? 2013. Get back to work. Because they're showing up on Saturday Night Live and 30 Rock. Go do something.
There are rumors that Daniel Craig is going to be in the MCU at some point.
Well, he was in Star Wars.
He was in Star Wars, yeah. And it seems like you can't just show up in one thing. I can see Daniel Craig. I can see Daniel Craig showing up in other roles in Marvel. Why not?
I mean, you give it enough time, everyone's going to be in the MCU. Yeah. You know what I mean? They make 20 movies.
I'm still mad that Joel McHale isn't, because almost everyone from Community has been in not even a Russo film, because Donald Glover is in Spider-Man Homecoming. But almost everyone from Community has been in a Marvel movie, and Joel McHale is built like a Marvel superhero.
Yeah.
He's in Spider-Man 2, but that doesn't count.
See, the thing is, the moment Joel McHale shows up, that will take me out. I mean,
like Jim Rash in Civil War doesn't.
Well,
maybe he's got a tiny little role,
Yeah, it's like, because Joel McHale's not going to show up just for. I mean, okay, I was able to handle Ahmed showing up playing a tech on the Shield helicarrier that's supposed to kill everybody.
Yeah,
but, in Winter Soldier. But beyond that, I'm like, and what the woman who played
she
was on the elevator.
Shirley's in the elevator.
The elevator.
Yeah.
Even then, you're like, oh wait, I know her from.
Kang is the guy that lets Ant-Man out of the storage space.
Right. Okay. You know what? I'll accept Joel McHale as a Shield agent or an agent in an Ant-Man movie. That I can take.
I would love Joel McHale to be in an Ant-Man movie. I feel like I want to see Joel McHale with Paul Rudd.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I could totally see that.
So we've talked about a lot of other films. Have we wrung Captain America dry?
No, I will say this. There's another great bit, and I'm sure the Russos saw this. If the symmetry of the Cap character, for those, if you're following this and you're watching the films, the very first time we're seeing Steve Rogers kind of like getting his ass handed to him, okay? He's getting beat up by some bully in an alley, and he grabs a garbage can lid, kind of like to hold as a shield, kind of like foreshadowing who he's going to be as Cap. Then you flip all the way ahead to Avengers Endgame, and he's facing off against Thanos, and Thanos is handing him his ass. And if anything, he's got to pick up his shield, which at this point is shattered. It's broken. And he just cinches it in, and he goes, okay, I know I'm getting my ass handed to me, but I'm not going to stop fighting. And I got to give them credit for being able to take that through line, like a perfect moment for the character to start on and to end on. I think of all the Marvel characters, with Iron Man, with Captain America, they perfectly embodied their arcs, their story arcs, their through lines from beginning to end. I will say they handled Cap even better than Iron Man, because you know, Iron Man 2 is a bit of a dud, whereas Cap 2, you know, Winter Soldier is gonna that's the movie that I introduced people to the MCU with.
Yeah, that's easily probably, like, in terms of like just a good film, you know, there's a lot of good Marvel films, but that's easily in the top. Just well made. It's not my favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but it's like, it's just a solid movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, my buddy took his wife to it, and she doesn't care about any of this stuff. And she's like, oh, that was great, because it's just like a good political thriller.
It's funny because that's the first MCU film I took my son to without my wife, because he was old enough. Now that's how we do every movie.
Yeah.
We went to Batman without my wife.
Captain America 2 is like the only franchise that just got consistently better as it went. You know,
yet
the other
changed. It's not like
it's
it doesn't have
not
a
the
through
same
line. Because every movie's very different.
Yeah. But it's just like every appearance of him, just he gets consistently better. Every Avengers movie, he's a little bit better. It's
and he has more and more of an impact on the overall Marvel universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the great part is that it works. That you can take his character, you can put him in all these different situations. Okay, the first one, 1940s serial. Second one, 1970s style political thriller. The third one, comic book event battle. And it works. You know, bing, bing, bing. You don't have to change his character. You don't even have to change his freaking lines. He says everything. He looks at the world the same way every time. And it just works. It works perfectly.
Well, you mentioned that scene with the trash can lid. The line he says is, I can do this all day. That becomes his catchphrase, which is not from the comics. It's not from anything.
Yeah.
That was written for that scene. And then they were like, oh, that's great. Let's reference it again. Because that scene embodies so much about what Captain America is, that when he says it in multiple movies, they want you to remind you of that skinny kid holding a trash can, which, by the way, I noticed this time when he holds it up, the bully just picks it up and throws it away.
Yeah.
He just takes it out of his hand. He doesn't even like use it as a shield.
Yeah, it's cool because they referenced it a lot throughout the movies. So like you said, it got to be like his catchphrase, and it's like a good, impactful line. And then the fact that it comes full circle when he says it to himself. And he's like, yeah, I know. It's like, it's that stuff where it's like they just hit it perfectly on that tone of like, it played so well as this emotional beat of like this little scrappy kid who like will not stop. And then the flip it on himself and make it like a joke. It just like, it hit perfectly on so many different levels.
And that is the core of the character, because yes, he's been enhanced. But he, well, in the comics anyway, he doesn't have super strength. In Winter Soldier, he will catch a helicopter.
Yeah, he's like ridiculous at this.
But
he throws like a motorcycle in Age of Ultron.
Yes, but he is unless you count Hawkeye and Black Widow. He is underpowered compared to Thor and Iron Man and Hulk and Vision. That's what he has. I mean, you know, it's like Batman in the Justice League. Why is Batman in the Justice League? Because he will not give up. Yeah. You know, Green Lantern will give up before Batman will. You know.
But he can still keep up with a car in a car chase.
Yeah.
He will do that in
a 1940s car.
No, but in Winter
those things were not aerodynamic in any way.
In Winter Soldier, he'll do it. In Civil War, remember when he and T'Challa are chasing after the.
Oh, yeah.
No, and I'm sorry, in Winter Soldier when he and
Oh, it's a Civil War because him and
Civil War,
T'Challa
right?
chase Winter Soldier in Civil War.
Right, and they're running along. There are these cars going, and they're running just as fast, as the cars. And you're like, holy crap! How are they doing that? And it's not like they even sped them up, like they advanced the frame rate of how to make it look like they were.
They don't look silly. They did it too in Winter Soldier when he does the on your left with Falcon. Yeah, and it's like he runs past him at the Lincoln Memorial or whatever, and it's like
when I was in my teens, I feel like I could keep up with a car running.
Not with Captain America.
No, I probably wouldn't keep up with Captain America, but the kind of cars my friends could drive, they were shooting smoke out the back.
But you're right. Captain America is not. I mean, I know in the comic books he's supposed to be like the peak of human evolution. Like he can do everything an Olympic athlete, an Olympic gold medal athlete can do.
He's as good as you can be at being human. Being human. He's not superhuman,
right?
But he's the peak of humanity. And again, when Marvel and DC would cross over, he would fight Batman because Batman is also the peak of what you could do as a human.
Right. He just did it the old-fashioned way.
Right. He can beat Batman. Let's be honest. He can beat Batman.
MCU Batman can beat Christian Bale. I'll give you that.
No, but in JLA Avengers,
Batman admits it.
Batman admits it. He can. Batman.
Oh yeah. In Marvel DC, they called it a tie.
They call it a tie, right?
Yeah. And speaking of which, JLA Avengers, if you're not a comic reader, 20 years ago, when the comic industry was really hurting and they didn't have any movies, Marvel and DC finally decided to publish a comic book series that teamed up the Justice League with the Avengers. It only happened once in comic book history. That book has been out of print for the last 20 years because the two companies no longer wanted to negotiate once the event was done. But George Perez, the artist, and Elliot is holding up the Absolute, which is the edition I also have, but I'm not getting up and going into another room. Well, that Absolute has been out of print for a good 20 years. So people have been asking, when will it come back into print? When will it come back into print? But between Warner Brothers and Disney, they don't want to share profits.
Yeah, it'll never happen.
But George Perez, sadly, is very ill. And he's trying to enjoy what life he has left. So as a tribute and to raise money for the Hero Initiative, which gives money to comic book artists and writers because they're all freelancers and they don't have health insurance. They put out a one-time printing 7,000 copies of Justice League Avengers again. However, because there's only 7,000 copies, they're very hard to find. So a lot of comic shops are honestly doing the right thing with the circumstance. A lot of them are doing raffles, or a lot of them are raising the prices, but donating all of that money to the Hero Initiative. So if this is something you're really interested in and you see the prices they're going for, it is going for a good cause. And as a story, it's so worth reading.
Yeah, it's like one of those comics where you're like, oh, it's like you couldn't believe that they did it. And then if you had asked me 5 years ago, I'm like, well, they'll never reprint it because they'll never play ball again. You know, they'll never figure out how to do it, especially now that these giant corporations own the comic companies. But good on the Hero Initiative for...
If you want to see Superman get hit in the face with Thor's hammer.
Yeah, it's the only place you'll see it. I think it's I don't know what the reasoning is. I'm sure there's a reason, but they could have printed 100,000 of these things. You know, it's like easily, because it's a 7,000, such a low number. And like I said, I'm sure there's a reason, or the Hero Initiative only had so many resources.
They also could have put the digital copy out on Comixology.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they will.
When I say Comixology, both the body temperature of Elliot and I rise 9 degrees.
Yeah.
I think I'm going Marvel Unlimited now.
Yeah.
I believe the 7,000 print run was because of it was such short notice. They wanted to do it right away. As I say, supply chain issues, as they've been saying.
Yeah.
That's the best they could do. And the ironic part being that this reprint is probably running in has a less of a circulation than the original run, than even this Ultimate run, which will make it even more valuable. There's some guys I've seen it. Some guys they've been exposed on social media that they're running around comic shops buying them on and then trying to flip them on eBay.
Yeah.
That's gross.
And not donating to the Hero Initiative.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you what I have the original books. In my long boxes I have the original 4-part miniseries
somewhere
in there. But I
sold my issues to get that hardcover.
Oh, really? And then I went and I bought the hardcover just thinking, not even because it had the little bonus bit. With the old the pages that Perez originally did that Liefeld bought, remember?
Yeah. Because they were going to do this in the 80s, and Perez started work on it, and then the negotiations fell through, and they canned it. So there's an extra book that just shows the art that he drew in the 80s. Because when this was announced, this is 2003, everybody thought, oh, you're going to pick up where you left off. And they were like, no, we're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So you have every licensed version of Marvel and DC characters together.
Yeah, at the time it was he drew every single person that had ever been a member of the Justice League in any iteration or the Avengers in any iteration. And it's like there's nobody else that could do this kind of stuff in comics. You know what I mean? It's like it was, and even like Kurt Busiek, the writer of the project, it's like maybe Mark Waid could have wrote this book, but it's like there's a handful of guys that could have wrote this. There's nobody else that could have drawn this book.
Yeah, and Kurt Busiek not only got George Perez to draw everyone that was ever in the Justice League or Avengers, but then in issue 3, he's like, oh, and there's time travel. So he got George Perez to draw them in every costume they ever had.
Yeah, it's a really cool book. It's like we got the Big Absolute when it came out through the shop I was working at the time, and they ordered 100 of them. And I don't know where they all ended up. I don't know if they ended up selling them all, but it was like I said, it's that Absolute edition will never be available again. And if you want it, you're going to pay $300 or $400 for it at this point.
Yeah.
Probably the best DC Marvel crossover you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There were some decent ones, but and some bad ones.
Yeah.
My favorite line of the whole thing was when you first see, mind you, the Avengers and the Justice League have kind of crossed paths a couple times, and they're still trying to figure each other out until finally they end up, I believe, in Metropolis. The Avengers are on top of a building, and Superman is like, okay, we're going to put a stop to this bullshit that these guys he believes are doing. And he's the Justice League are hovering over the Avengers. They're facing off. And Hawkeye goes, oh yeah, now I get it. These guys are a bunch of Squadron Supreme knockoffs.
Yeah. It's a great line.
Yeah, which were the DC knockoffs that Roy Thomas introduced to Marvel.
He goes, and odds are they're mind controlled too.
Another Squadron Supreme trope.
Yes. What I loved in that was that the Marvel characters go to the DC universe and the DC universe goes to the Marvel universe. And that Marvel universe is like, why is everything so clean? It looks fake. And then the DC characters are like, everything's dirty. These heroes must be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like,
I'm not impressed.
Yeah. None of them were impressed at all.
It was
Which
like
is funny. That's the first
by fans.
I say that's the first line that Superman says to Steppenwolf when he finally resurrected in Zack Snyder's Justice League. Remember? Not impressed.
Yeah, that's how I felt about Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, even when he took a second stab at it.
Well, it's been a long time since we've talked about Captain America, so I think it might be time to wrap this up.
Can I? I'll say my final thoughts on Captain America, the First Avenger. I would say let's say you are a noob to the MCU, and you want to get into it, but you don't feel like you want to sit through every movie. Boom, watch the first Iron Man, watch Thor, watch Captain America. You're set. You don't need to watch Hulk. Even the second Iron Man movie, not that big a deal.
No.
Watch those 3. You can go right into Avengers and know everything you need to know. Mind you, with Avengers, with Iron Man 2, that's when we meet Black Widow for the first time.
Yeah, but I feel like we'll talk about this next episode. She gets introduced pretty well.
Yes, in Avengers, yes. Joss Whedon does do her justice.
Because we also basically start Hulk from scratch, and he's introduced very well.
Yeah, and with Hulk, if you just everyone knows the premise of Hulk, so you really don't need to see the Hulk movie.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Which I don't know I don't think we brought this up on the Hulk episode. In Spider-Man, everybody's so impressed that when we get to Spider-Man Homecoming that they don't do the origin because Sam Raimi did it so well, and then Mark Webb did it. But we don't get a Hulk origin in the MCU.
Yeah,
even in the Hulk movie, he's already Hulk.
Yeah, you do kind of get it in the opening credits for the Hulk movie.
Yeah, but it's kind of an homage to the.
It's an
Bill Bixby
homage.
show,
Yeah, it's like that's as much as we get, and I'm fine with that. Like Elliot said, I mean, I remember the Lou Ferrigno show. You know what I mean? It was such a big deal. It's like Hulk was like one of Marvel's major characters for so long. Some characters you don't really need to do the origin anymore. You know, we needed to see an Iron Man origin. You needed to see a Thor origin. I don't know that you needed to see a Hulk or Spider-Man or Superman or Batman anymore. You know?
And you sit there and you go, man, that Hulk character is so beholden to the old show, which dramatically changes his origin.
Yeah.
You know, to me, I believe that the original origin of the Hulk with Banner getting caught in the blast of a gamma bomb, trying to save Rick Jones, who that's another character. I keep waiting for them to bring Rick Jones into the MCU somehow. Which,
but without Hulk, what's he going to do?
Yeah, what's he going to do, right?
Yeah, and without a Captain Marvel, because they're not going to do the switcheroo, you know?
Right,
like the classic Captain Marvel.
It just occurred to me, once we get the multiverse, you know, you can bring Rick Jones in and start doing all that sort of shit with him.
Yeah, but once you get the multiverse, eventually I'm Cyclops.
Yeah, the multiverse opens up a can of worms. I'm hoping we'll open that door and then we'll close it right back up again.
And you were saying, John, they're not recasting Iron Man. No, they're not. But again, the rumor is Tom Cruise is superior Iron Man.
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors about Multiverse of Madness, and there'll be a lot to talk about when we get to that.
So you can watch those movies. Go into Avengers. We'll talk Avengers next time. But again, I have to say, as closing thoughts on Captain America, as the movie that now boom, and yes, there's even a deleted scene where they show that final scene when Cap realizes he's in the modern world. And if you watch on Disney Plus, and I believe it's on the DVD as well, you see the original version of that particular scene. And you're like, wow, they actually made the right choice. The scene they put in the film works better than the deleted scene. So it's like they were making, whether it was casting, the way they were putting this movie together, the script, everything, they were just making all the right choices on this one.
Yeah, in terms of like an origin movie, it's like Iron Man's a great origin movie. Captain America's probably the second best origin movie we've had. It's like Black Panther's really good. There's a lot of great, origins they've done in the superhero Marvel MCU, but Captain America's definitely up there in terms of like nailing the character, nailing the period piece. Like the whole thing works really, really well.
Yeah, I think this is a very good movie. I think we haven't. Well, as I said, Iron Man was a fluke. Iron Man is great, but we're at expectations. We're not going to get consistently great yet. This is as good as Marvel could expect to be, and it's very, very solid. I enjoy it every time. I enjoyed it so much that I'm not even going to get into what a mess the Tesseract thing is at this point. that is not an Infinity Stone. Like it was like the Red Skull says it was like Odin's. It's like, all right, you guys are gonna figure this out later. But
well, don't they allude to it in the Dark World, right?
Yeah, but the Dark World comes after Avengers.
Dark World,
so there's no plan for the Infinity Stones until Joss Whedon decides to throw Thanos into the Avengers for no reason.
Yeah,
and it worked. God bless him, it worked. But John's absolutely correct. That whatever the Tesseract was supposed to be, it was not that.
Why didn't he just call it the goddamn Cosmic Cube? Come on, that's
it is the Cosmic Cube. But now the Cosmic Cube is an Infinity Stone. They're not two separate things anymore.
But in JLA Avengers. The Cosmic Cube is an item of power that they need to go after. So,
Yes, it is. As well as the Wand of Watum.
Yeah.
Which I just, I just like because whenever I see something like that, I just imagine Stanley sitting at his desk in Midtown Manhattan going, "Gagoo!" Oh, that's a good one. Frumba-doomba. Yeah, we're doing that. That's a monster. Zingaringo. Oh, that's a girl. That's a girlfriend's name.
And I just want to mention for those who are listening to this as a podcast on the Radio Misfits Podcast Network, you missed the visual jokes that we were able to make, the visual cues that we were able to perform on the live stream, or if you watch the show as a video cast on any of our video broadcast pages.
Yeah, we're like the Always Sunny podcast. If you're listening to audio, you're missing a lot.
Yeah, just like the Always Sunny cast.
There's 3 of them. Oh, well, yeah, as always, this has been fun. We will be back to talk about Avengers with the same lineup, and hopefully we'll have Dave Pinto, and we'll have all 4 members of the Shaken Not Heard Caffeinated Comics.
Bring the team together.
Yes. Steven, how do we find you online?
You can find me on Instagram and YouTube at The Brave Butter Pecan.
Yes, and your YouTube videos are great.
They're also on the hiatus indefinitely.
Yeah, we missed them. That was the
Yeah.
thing. I didn't want to be the one to say that you haven't been doing that.
I've been occupied.
Yeah.
But they're great videos, though. A lot of content, well-researched, well-presented.
Very well produced. Thanks to both.
Appreciate the kind words.
Very well done, folks. If you haven't checked them out, you really need to watch these videos, up the view count, up the subscribership. I would love to see more content, but to make it worth it, people need to see this stuff and share it. So by all means, yeah.
Yeah, and Elliot, how do we find you?
Of course, at Elliot Serrano on Instagram, Twitter, and on my Facebook page. You can always also see me at King of Geeks Chicago. That's Facebook.com/King of Geeks Chicago, Facebook.com/Shaken Not Heard. Of course, we also have the MCU ReVu page on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So you can see me all over there. The Shaken Not Heard page has been going out, taking a little bit of a break because there's not so much Bond news. But we'll be coming back with the.
Well, you don't have a Bond, number one.
We don't have a Bond right now, but we're going to be talking about it's March Madness. It's the NCAA tournament. We're going to have some tournaments of our own, determining the best Bond villains, the best Bond scores, and so on.
I'm such a nerd that March Madness to me means the Joker is free.
Yeah.
Or St. Patrick's Day got out of hand again.
Which it will.
Yeah. If you are listening to this as an audio podcast, then you know that it is part of the Caffeinated Comics audio feed, which is part of the Radio Misfits Podcast Network. And you can find that anywhere you find podcasts, whether it is Stitcher or Apple Music or Amazon or Spotify, or as Elliot likes to say, yelling at your Echo.
Or Alexa.
Yes. And you can follow me at Not On My Book on Twitter and Instagram. And that is my official feed. And I don't tend to carry another one. The Caffeinated Comics page is facebook.com/Caffeinated Comics, where this show is posted right now, as well as all things Fit to Geek, the newest trailers, the latest news, how George Perez is doing. And that's a great spot to start. And that's very connected with the MCU review.
And if you do want to go back and listen to other previous episodes of the Caffeinated Comics podcast, where they did a nice review of the Batman. You guys had a nice, extensive discussion about that, the conclusion of the Peacemaker series, and any other news going on in comics, outside of just the MCU. And every once in a while I pop in on those.
That's true. There are comics outside the MCU.
Occasionally.
About this many.
Yeah, not many.
And they all have Batman in them. I guess that's it. It's time to say goodnight, kids.
Good night, kids.
Good night, kids.
Go to bed.
Go to bed.